The argument didn't start over a girl. It didn't start over a boat, or a ride home, or who was leaving when. According to the woman who says she watched it happen, it started over a phone. She says she was a passenger on another boat near Horn Island that afternoon. She says she saw an argument involving Nolan Wells and several other individuals, and that the argument escalated after a dispute involving Nolan's phone. She says she heard Nolan yelling for his phone to be returned. She says the argument continued after the group reached shore. She says it became physical. She says there was a young woman there telling them to stop. And here is why that account landed the way it did. Nobody who was on that island has ever described a fight. Not in the interviews that have been published, not in the messages that have been reviewed publicly. Not one account from inside that group has ever included an altercation. She also says her husband recorded part of it. If that recording exists, one detail on it matters more than everything else in this story combined. Not what it shows, when it was taken. This is Case Desk, and tonight we're going to walk through exactly what that would prove, exactly what it wouldn't, and why one number on one file has become the most important unanswered question in this case. But before any of that means anything, there's a problem with this account. And it's the same problem every viral witness in this case has had. She went public. She posted her statement. She identified herself. She said she had provided, or intended to provide, her account to the appropriate investigators. And she also said she messaged one of the individuals she says she saw, telling that person she had been a passenger on another boat, that she saw the argument, that she would go to the police with the information, and that she had video footage. Read that sequence again. She contacted a person she says was involved in the fight. She told them what she had, and then she went online with it. There is no public confirmation that the original video has ever reached the sheriff's office. There is no public confirmation that her phone has been examined, that her statement has been documented, or that anything she has been authenticated. And that distinction matters more than people realize, because posting something to 500,000 people is not the same thing as handing evidence to investigators. So the obvious reaction is to dismiss her. A lot of people already have. But set her credibility aside for a moment, because the more important question isn't whether she's telling the truth, it's whether what she describes can even be tested. And this is where her account is different from almost everything else that has surfaced in this case. She is not saying she has a feeling. She is not saying she thinks she saw Nolan somewhere. She is describing a sequence, and every piece of that sequence attaches to something checkable. She names a location, a boat near the area. She names a trigger, a dispute over a phone. She names a specific thing she heard, Nolan asking for it back. She names an escalation point, the argument continuing after the group reached shore. She names a physical confrontation involving multiple people. She names a witness to it, a young woman trying to stop it. And she names the limit of her own account. She left because the situation appeared to be getting worse, and she did not stay long enough to see what happened afterward. That last part is unusual. Most people who go viral with a claim in a case like this claim more than they saw. She claims less. And when a claim is that specific, investigators have something to work with. They can ask what boat she was on, who else was aboard, how far away she was, what was obstructing her view, whether she knew Nolan before that day, and how she identified him, what exactly she heard, how long she watched, whether she recorded anything, when the recording was created, whether it was edited, whether it was sent to anyone. Every one of those questions can be checked against something. And one of them can be checked against a number. Because the timeline in this case has a hard edge in it. The Triton left around 4:30. That figure has anchored the public understanding of that afternoon since July. There have also been claims, unconfirmed, of witnesses placing Nolan on Horn Island later, around 5, possibly 6. Those two things cannot both be casually true. Either Nolan was on that island after the boats left, or he wasn't. And a timestamp on a video file is not a memory. It doesn't get tired, it doesn't drink, it doesn't reconstruct itself 6 weeks later. It sits outside every credibility argument anyone has made about this witness. If that recording exists, and it carries a timestamp, it either places Nolan on Horn Island after 4:30, or it doesn't. That's why this account got the reaction it did. Here's what happened when it was put in front of people who do this for a living. Listen to how they handle it, and pay close attention to what nobody in that conversation is actually able to answer.
Tonight, the Nolan Wells investigation into the death of a shining star, Nolan Wells, has an altercation witness emerged, a witness that claims she saw an altercation at Horn Island.
I have not spoken publicly about this before, but I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells from a boat nearby. What I saw has stayed with me, and I believe it's important information. I have provided or intend to provide my account to the appropriate investigators because Nolan's family deserves the truth. Out of respect for the ongoing investigation, I won't speculate beyond what I personally observed. While I was on the boat near the area, I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells and several other individuals. I saw what appeared to be an argument that escalated after there was a dispute involving Nolan's phone. I heard Nolan yelling for his phone to be returned. The argument continued after the group reached shore, and I observed a physical fight involving Nolan and multiple people. I also observed a young woman telling them to stop. At that point, I left the area because the situation had appeared to be getting worse. I did not remain long enough to witness what happened afterward. Everything beyond what I personally observed would be speculation, so I cannot honestly say what occurred after I left. Then she said she messaged one of the individuals that she saw, "Hey, I just want to say I was a passenger on another boat and I saw the argument between you guys and will go to the police with this information. I also have video footage. My husband doesn't show much, but it shows the argument that was taken and how you guys were upset at Nolan because of the..."
Change everything, especially if the video is time stamped. Straight out to veteran trial lawyer, defense attorney Philip Dubay joining me. He is joining us out of LA, formerly in the public defender's office. They try a ton of cases. Philip, first of all, has she turned it into police? She said she was. If she hasn't, I give her no credibility at all. Look, I want this to be true. Why? Because I want the video. I want to see the timestamp on the video. I want to see, was he still on Horn Island at 4:30 when his acquaintances on the Triton boat left? I want that video. And if she hasn't brought this forward to LE, law enforcement, then it means nothing to me. I mean, if I know a young man turns up dead in the water, and I know there's a controversy surrounding this, I mean, we know she knows that because she's gone online and posted it, then why not hand it over to police?
Agreed. And it should go to the grand jury for part of their investigation. But I got to tell you, if I were cross-examining her, should this even go to trial, the first question I'd ask her on that 4th of July, what she had been drinking. Before that video got activated, everybody would want to
put him up.
Drinking and smoking. You know how many people were partying?
Okay, man. Have you lost your mind? You defend criminal cases. I bet everybody you put on the stand has either been high, drunk, or worse during the altercation. Every witness is not a nun, a priest, or a virgin. Everybody on Horn Island was drinking, man. What are you talking about? I don't care if she took a drink. I want the video.
You want the truth is what you want. You want the truth. And let's
and that would be the video.
Yeah. Remember, Nancy.
Okay.
Not consistent.
Brandon Tatum is joining us. So after all that, all you have to say is, was she drinking? That's your takeaway from that? Joining me is Brandon Tatum, former police officer, Tucson, now star of The Officer Tatum on YouTube, who famously has interviewed the acquaintances who all say they had nothing to do with it. Let's just put that out there. He's interviewed them extensively. I want to talk about not what you want to talk about, Brandon Tatum, which is they had nothing to do with this, because I met them and I believe them. So noted. Can we talk about a potential witness to an altercation? And she seems to suggest it was over Katie. Why? Don't know what the altercation was. Maybe it was, hey, leave her alone and get on the boat. Or leave her alone, she's my girlfriend. Or it could be anything. But if there is a witness placing Nolan seemingly in the water, I can't tell that, but having an argument with another person, a partier at Horn Island, that is significant. It could prove or disprove your friend's timeline?
Well, Nancy, I think that it's a big obstacle to climb here because I've never heard of this altercation whatsoever. Nobody that I've talked to have alluded that this altercation was real. And also Katie, whom I saw her text messages, she didn't even say this altercation occurred. What I will say is that if I was an investigator in this investigation, I want to hear that. I want to be able to compare that information to other things that we may have or other witness statements. But I don't think it's significant because it doesn't show if Nolan Wells was actually killed in that altercation. She's claiming that there was an altercation between him arguing with somebody else. There was a potential fight, but that doesn't get me to how did he drown? How did he get in the water? And how did he not recover and come home to his family? So I would take that into consideration. I would compare that to the other interviews that I've done, but I don't think it's significant whatsoever. However, I would be incredibly skeptical because there's no other statements that I've heard from anybody that comes even close to an altercation with Nolan Wells and others over a girl.
Number one, he's dead shortly after an alleged altercation with another male. We think over a woman. See, in my world, I put together both circumstantial and direct evidence. Direct evidence would be, for instance, DNA or a fingerprint. Circumstantial evidence is the timing of the alleged altercation and his death. Right?
Nancy,
So it's hard for me to believe that there's some kind of altercation on Horn Island just before he dies and they were not connected. That's hard for me to believe that.
Well, Nancy, she's not saying he lost the fight. She's not saying that he got beat up. If you look at the autopsy, there's no clear signs of blunt force trauma to his face or any of the vital areas that could kill him. So it doesn't appear that there's any indication that he lost a fight, that there was enough trauma in this particular fight that would lead to his death. And when you look at the autopsy, there is no blunt force trauma to his face. There is no lacerations or damages to the back of his head. This is redness that was underneath the skin.
Oh, wait, are you looking at the screen? Because I'm looking at a big red mark on the back of his head.
Yeah, but this is underneath the skin. This is not a big red gash that's in the back of his head, which would be consistent with blunt force trauma. This is something that occurred underneath the skin that could have been from pooling of blood after his death due to,
Okay, I need to explain something.
I'll let the experts talk about specifics, but it doesn't appear that.
Okay, let's do that. But I want everyone to understand why Officer Tatum is here. Officer Tatum and Philip Dubé and others on our panel tonight are taking a particular side, right? It's called cross-examination, and it is similar to what happens in court. A theory emerges, a line of questioning emerges, and the other side tests it with fire under cross-examination. And then, hopefully, you get to the truth. Right now, we're talking about an alleged eyewitness to an altercation just before Nolan Wells is dead. If she has not handed this over to the police, it doesn't mean a hill of beans to me. But Tatum has a good idea, and that is let's let an expert discuss it. To Joseph Scott Morgan, death investigator, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University. You can see him now on a hit podcast. It's on YouTube, Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Joe Scott, if there had been not a blunt force trauma that Officer Tatum is describing, but a fist fight, if there had been a fist fight, plus body in water for multiple days, body decomposition, would you expect to see red marks on the hands at that juncture, on the face? What would you expect if there had been a fisticuffs?
Yeah, you would see, well, first off, above discolored areas, like consistent with contusions. If there are facial strikes or just body blows, you can actually see abraded areas over the surface of his fingers. And these are very subtle sometimes. And if there is decomposition, which we believe there is, particularly per the second autopsy that was performed, he didn't make note of this. And can I go one more step with this? And this is kind of graphic, but people need to understand this. This physician that did the second autopsy actually did what's referred to as a coronal sectioning of the face.
So let's sort what we just heard, because there are 4 different categories of information in that conversation, and they are not equal. Confirmed, the district attorney has publicly stated that she is obligated to present the grand jury with the evidence collected in the case. She has said the rules of professional conduct in Mississippi restrict what a prosecutor can release during an investigation, and that the restraint is about protecting the integrity of the investigation and the grand jury proceeding. Reported, the state autopsy has been completed. The findings have not been released. Alleged, the altercation, the phone dispute, the video, and unverified. Everything that came in through an unnamed source. There was a claim in that conversation that the case has been reclassified as a criminal investigation rather than an accidental drowning. The stated source for that was, quote, "a little birdie." That is not reportable. We're not treating it as information, and neither should you. Now, there's one thing in that conversation I need to slow down on, because it cuts directly against everything we've been building. The second autopsy. According to the forensic expert on that panel, the physician who performed the second autopsy carried out what's called a coronal sectioning of the face. That means multiple incisions were made into Nolan's face specifically to look beneath the surface for injury, and nothing indicative of blunt force trauma was noted. That same expert pointed out what he would expect if a person had been in a physical fight with a group. Marks on the leading edge of the forearm, the backs of the hands, the knuckles, points of contact. Discoloration consistent with contusions if there were facial strikes. There is nothing noted in the second autopsy to indicate that. So, does that end it? No. And this is the part that gets flattened online in both directions. The absence of documented blunt force trauma does not mean no altercation occurred. It means no fatal blunt force trauma was documented in that examination. Those are different statements. A person can be in a physical fight and not lose it. A person can be in a physical fight and not carry a finding a pathologist can identify in a body recovered from water days later. And critically, that was the second autopsy. What the state has, we don't know. That report is complete, and it has not been released. So neither account gets eliminated here. The witness account is not confirmed by the autopsy. It is also not disproven by it. And that brings us to the hole in the middle of all of this. She left. Even if every single word she said is accurate, even if the video exists, even if it's time-stamped, even if it shows exactly what she says it shows, her account stops before the part that matters. She said it herself. She did not remain long enough to witness what happened afterward. Everything beyond what she personally observed would be speculation. So the best case scenario for this witness is that she tells us what happened before Nolan disappeared. She cannot tell us what happened after. And the gap between Nolan's last confirmed movements and the recovery of his body is still exactly where it was. There's one more thing raised in that conversation worth flagging, carefully. There's a claim that an MDMR report refers to one vessel by one name, while another source refers to a different name. If those are genuinely 2 different vessels, that's something investigators should clarify. But a spelling error, a transcription mistake, a nickname, and an actual wrong vessel search are 4 very different things, and we cannot establish from what's been presented which one this is. So nobody should leave this video saying, authorities searched the wrong boat. The responsible version of that question is simply, was the vessel named in the report the same vessel investigators intended to search? If it was clerical, explain it. If it wasn't, that's significant. And that's the standard this whole thing has to be held to, including the friends. They have said they left Nolan behind. They have given their explanations. They have spoken about the timeline and provided information to investigators, and there have been references to Life 360 data and other records supporting aspects of their movements. We are not saying they're lying. We don't know that. We're also not saying they're telling the truth. We don't know that either. What we can say is that their account and this new account describe the same afternoon differently, and when 2 pieces of information don't match, you don't pick your favorite. You investigate the mismatch. That's usually where the truth is sitting. I want to stop for a second, because today, Nolan should have been 19. 19. His mother should be watching birthday messages come in. Instead, she's watching strangers who never met her son debate his final hours like an episode of something. Birthdays are supposed to mark another year of life. For his family, this one marks another year they don't get. So whatever theory you hold, whatever side you think you're on, The person at the center of this is not a case. He's not a mystery. His name is Nolan Wells. Here's what would actually settle this. 1. Can this witness be independently verified? 2. Does the alleged video actually show Nolan? 3. What is the timestamp on that video? 4. Was Nolan still on Horn Island after the boats left? 5. What happened to his phone? 6. What does the completed state autopsy actually say? Tonight we have more information. We do not have more answers. What emerged is a lead, a potentially important one, and now investigators have to determine what, if anything, it proves. And if you're watching this and you genuinely have information about that afternoon, don't turn it into a post. Preserve the original file. Don't edit it, don't crop it, don't add anything to it. Keep your messages. Write down the time and the location while you still remember them. And take it to investigators, because that's the only place it can actually do anything. We're going to leave it where the evidence leaves it. Not with a verdict, not with an accusation, with a question. Who was with Nolan Wells after the boats left? If you've been following this case, tell me in the comments what you think investigators should clarify first. And keep it respectful. You can challenge a timeline. You can challenge evidence. You don't get to declare someone guilty of something that hasn't been proven. Subscribe to Case Desk and turn on notifications, because when the state autopsy is released, we'll be covering it the same way we covered this. Confirmed is confirmed, alleged is alleged, and when we don't know, we'll say we don't know. Happy 19th birthday, Nolan. We're still asking.